What's up, everybody? We're back here in NFL Week 5, taking you through each and every game this week, walking through the money line, the spread, and the over-under of the game, taking you through a quick analysis and update for each individual matchup, and then giving you my prediction here. Let's jump right into it. But first, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying it. Subscribe to the channel to keep getting content like this and the other content we post in the NFL, and comment who you're taking in NFL Week 5. Looking at the Thursday night football matchup here, we got the Rams hosting their divisional rivals, the San Francisco 49ers here. A little bit higher spread than what's typical in these matchups between the two teams. Usually a pretty hard-fought battle, but this year there's some clear differences in talent on these two teams. The Rams have looked great all season at 3-1 here, facing the 3-1 opponents versus the 49ers, but a little different in nature here. The Rams one loss coming against the Eagles in a real tough game against the reigning Super Bowl champs. Believe it or not, even despite that loss, the Rams ranked highest overall in PFF total grade, really on the backs of a great passing attack behind Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua really being his number one option, having a great pass rush on the defense as well as a pretty solid front seven for the run defense, and overall just a well-balanced approach. For the Niners here, you're seeing a weakness in defense compared to what they've been in prior seasons. Some of that has been loss of talent, like Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw playing football for the Broncos. Part of that's injury. Nick Bosa, pictured here, injured and not playing in these games, also depletes the pass rush and overall defensive front they've had. Niners are no strangers to having issues with injuries. Also on the offensive end, we got Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings battling injuries, even George Kittle battling injuries early this season. So a lot of things not going the 49ers' way early here. It's really pretty tough for them to win this game on the road here against the Rams team that had a pretty convincing win, forcing some nice turnovers against Daniel Jones and handing the Colts the first loss here. I like the Rams to win this game. Again, given how elite really their passing attack has been going against a San Francisco unit that's defense is not as up to par, or really not to the standard that we expect out of the 49ers defensive unit. They still have a pretty solid secondary. It's just no one's been able to slow down Matt Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Devontae Adams. I think you see an under in this game. I'm liking the under 46.5 because I believe these games are usually pretty hard fought between these opponents. But I like the Rams to win this game somewhere in the arena of like 24-18, 24-19 here. So I guess that would also imply I like the Niners to cover the spread here in a tough fought divisional game. This game's being played in London after the Vikings just spent their days in Dublin. Line opened at the Vikings -4.5 here, quickly moved to 3.5 as I think people took that 6 points in the first three quarters against the Steelers to heart. I'm starting to realize and understand this Vikings offense is not the unit that it was last year either. What the Vikings really have going for them in this matchup specifically is riding the backs of their solid defense behind really qualified defense coordinator Brian Flores, who's I think in his third season there. And on the flip side, not only no matter who's manning quarterback for the Browns, is that offense a little bit depleted and inefficient. To add insult to injury, you're having Dillon Gabriel, the I think third-round draft pick out of Oregon, having his first career start here with the Browns. Not the ideal environment against this Vikings defense, not in London, not with your home crowd. I think it's going to be tough for Dillon Gabriel to really fare well with the weapons he has on offense at wide receiver, especially with a guy like Cedric Tillman out against this Vikings defense. That being said, I think this Browns defense is so smothering and the best in the league that it can give fellow rookie, or I guess second-year quarterback, first-year starter J.J. McCarthy trouble. As I mentioned, the Vikings have had their struggles offensively this year, most notably against the Steelers last week, who have a very similar defensive structure to the Browns, where they have a loaded front seven and even front four on the defensive line and can generate a lot of pressure with just rushing four guys. That's what the formula you're going to see the Browns employ. And if it can work, then the Vikings certainly are on upset alert here. But because of the fact, again, of Dillon Gabriel and his true inexperience in a single snap in the NFL, you got to give the tip of the cap to the Vikings here. I think it's going to be a really, really low-scoring game. I don't think either team scores 20 points. I'm going to go something like the Vikings 16, Browns 10 this game. Like really low scoring game. I just don't think, again, I don't think this Browns offense has even against the Packers in the game that they won, they haven't been putting up more than 13, 14 points a game. Again, Dylan Gabriel, rookie quarterback, first snaps against a solid defense for the Vikings. Not the ideal scenario for the Browns here. This is a really intriguing game that opened up as the Ravens being favored, but upon news that Lamar Jackson will not be playing due to a hamstring injury, the line swung in favor to the road team, the one-win Texans, heading to Baltimore against the one-win Ravens. The intriguing stat that you might have seen about this matchup is the Texans have one of the worst scoring offenses, but they do have the best scoring defense, meaning they allowed the fewest points per game out of any team in the NFL this season. On the flip side, the Ravens have one of the better offenses in the NFL, but have the worst defense in terms of points per game, allowing the highest scoring totals through 4 games this season. So it is the movable object versus the stoppable force here between these two matchups. But without Lamar Jackson, this Ravens team is going to really have to rely on the run game versus a pretty stout Texans defense, like I mentioned. The best in the league at limiting opposing teams' offense in terms of scoring. I'd like to see C.J. Stroud here for the Texans take a step up and continue the momentum that he built upon last week against the Texans, another pretty poor defense. You saw what the offense was capable of last week if given enough opportunity. I think they're going to get enough opportunity here if they can slow down the Ravens' run game and Derrick Henry, which is much easier said than done. Another low-scoring game here, I'd imagine, based on the offensive inefficiencies that the Texans have produced, and then the lack of starting quarterback for the Ravens. I think I'm going to give the nod to the Texans. They're not going to win this game. John Harbaugh, I think he's the longest tenured coach in the NFL right now for the Ravens. He can't go 1-4. This is a true playoff team in a really talented offensive roster, even without Lamar Jackson. They're going to keep their same scheme. They're going to get Isaiah Likely back at tight end. They're going to run the ball to Derrick Henry as many times as possible in this game and control the clock. And I think they're going to figure it out. I'm going to take the Ravens here at home in an upset, actually. In a low-scoring game, I'm going to give this one Ravens 20, Texans 19. Here's a matchup of one-win teams that could get ugly. When you get the Panthers getting absolutely obliterated by the Patriots last week, hosting the Dolphins, who won on Monday Night Football, but lost Tyreek Hill, there you could call a star wide receiver in the outcome. I'm really not looking forward too much to this game. I think if you watched that game against the Jets, the Dolphins showed a real inability to stop the run game, and the reason that it worked out for them is they got up early, so the Jets were forced to pass, which is a real depletion within their offense and just not even close to a strength. For the Panthers, I mean, their defense has just let everyone through. With the Patriots, who have struggled to put up meaningful points this season, just torched them to the tune of 40+ points last week. You're going to see a high scoring affair here, I would imagine, given the speed and tempo of the Dolphins offense, and then again the inefficiency for the Dolphins to stop the run on the defense. I think you got to start with the Dolphins here. Is the real absolute weakness out of any of these teams is the Panthers defense, who are coming in a bottom 5 unit over on the league, and again, just a real deficiency around both the run game and especially coverage, as you saw against the Patriots last week. Yeah, just not enough going for the Panthers offense, who I think they can overcome what their defense has given them. And so I'm going to take the Dolphins here to win the game, and I'm going to take the over too. So I would say something like the Dolphins can, lean on Jalen Waddle, who was really highly draft pick at wide receiver, a lot of speed. Devon Achane playing great ball at running back here. You're going to need a guy like Malik Washington for the Dolphins to step up for them to win this game in the tune of like 24. I guess I'm going to go over. I'm going to go 27-23 Dolphins here. Colts coming off their first loss of the year against, again, one of the better teams in this league in the Rams. Raiders with a really brutal loss at home against the Bears, and that's saying something because the Bears have looked pretty gruesome this year. I'm an Indiana Jones believer. They lost that game against the Rams because of the 3 turnovers committed by Daniel Jones in that offense. If they can do a better job of holding on the rock. I think they blow out the Raiders like they did their opponents the first 3 weeks of the season. The Raiders have shown a really real inability to stymie the turnovers that Geno Smith and that offense produces. I don't think it shouldn't be as bad as it was against the Bears. 4 turnovers is pretty hard to replicate week after week, but they've shown a real inefficiency there and a real penchant for turning the ball over. If that continues, and I think it will, and the Colts can go back to their first 3 weeks' ways with playing very efficient football behind Jonathan Taylor and letting Daniel Jones kind of coast, peppering the ball to his myriad of options on offense, especially a wide receiver and Tyler Warren at tight end. I like the Colts here to blow out the Raiders, actually run up the score and win this game like 33-20. Like, just really show the offensive prowess that they showed the first 3 weeks against a pretty piss poor Raiders defense that's coming in. I want to say they might be worse than the Panthers. They're not quite to that level, but this Raiders team I think was second to last year in total defensive grade, and they haven't done much to improve that this year. I would expect that to continue in Week 5. Another matchup of 1 win. Actually, Saints don't have any wins. Hosting the 1-win Giants here. This is going to be Jackson Dart's second start, but they're going to be playing without Malik Neighbors for the first full game this year. Their star wide receiver. I think he got a little bit more firepower on the Saints offense, and certainly a little more continuity. This is a game that I don't think anyone's outside of the 2 fan bases is really looking forward to watching. But I think anytime you get a winless team that's favored at home, something's going on here. Vegas knows they have a little bit of an edge, and I think it is because you've got a rookie quarterback and rookie running back without your star wide receiver here for an offense. This Giants offense is really, really going to struggle, and they're going to have to rely heavily on something that most teams wouldn't like to be in a position in, and that's leaning on Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton at wide receiver, which is not necessarily the strongest wide receiver locker room in the NFL. Cam Scatterbo maybe be that big X factor in this offense this game, but when you got guys like Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, Rashid Shaheed for the Saints, that's a little bit more explosive, a little bit more eye popping this game. I think they get 1 or 2 more big plays than the Giants. I think the Saints win this game. The one edge the Giants do have is a tremendous pass rush in their front 4. Rookie Abdul Carter, former top 5 pick Kayvon Thibodeau, this Dexter Lawrence in defense like that, or defensive tackle, that's a pretty scary unit. If those guys can get pressure rushing 4, then that's the recipe for the Giants to win the game. But again, I think the Saints get enough big plays here to outlast the Giants in a low-scoring game. 20-14 Saints. Coming off of a short week on Monday Night Football, the Jets host the Cowboys after a tough tie on Sunday Night Football. You're seeing some great offense from Dak Prescott, even without CeeDee Lamb in this Cowboys unit, but you are seeing a complete inability to stop any opposing offense from that defense, which is making it really, really tough for the Cowboys to put up W's here, despite, again, Dak Prescott's best efforts. The Jets' defense has not lived up to the hype, despite having a couple really big names on that side of the football, especially Sauce Gardner at cornerback. Even on offense, you're not seeing, standout college wide receiver Garrett Wilson really get much going with Justin Fields at quarterback. Even Breece Hall, while very talented, is not really making explosive plays here. And if Justin Fields isn't running, then he's really not being effective as a quarterback. You're not getting much offensive production from this unit outside of running the football between either Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, who's not playing, Isaiah Davis, the third-string running back, or Justin Fields at cornerback here. I gotta like the Cowboys in the edge here, given that 1, the Jets don't have much going for them on offense, and 2, Dak Prescott in this offense is just really clicking. Javonte Williams at running back, giving them an extra wrinkle to the offense that I think most people didn't expect going into this year. That running back room very much up in the open. He spilled that role nicely. Dak Prescott is making a case for comeback player of the year. And if this defense can just slow down the inept Jets offense just a little bit, I like the Cowboys to win this game and cover this one. I think they're going to stick to their offensive prolific ways, put up 28 points here, and hold the Jets to just 20 with the Cowboys' best defensive output this season. Not because of anything they're doing right, but more so because of what the Jets do wrong. This will be a really intriguing game for me. With the Eagles, obviously the Super Bowl champions here, hosting the Broncos, and the big reason being the tremendous second-year unit that the Broncos employ, headed by Defensive Player of the Year Patrick Surtain, against an Eagles passing attack that's really, really struggled. I don't think Jalen Hurts has broken 200 yards passing this game, and to be fair, I think the Eagles' record is worse on games when he passes for over 200 yards versus under, just because you don't want to be in a position if you're the Eagles where you need Jalen Hurts to throw the ball for you to win. They have such a great recipe of running the ball with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts effectively, passing the ball really only when needed to, and leaning back on their great defense. Ultimately, I think that formula will give them success in this game because I don't think the Broncos offense is prolific as you saw against the Bengals. I think it's just a product of a lot of opportunities against a poor defense. But I'm not sold on Bo Nix. I think he's having a little bit of regression in his sophomore year as guys and teams get a little bit more tape and picked up on some of his tendencies. You're not seeing, RJ Harvey at running back having the huge season I think people predicted for him to have, although J.K. Dobbins has been filling in nicely in filling out that running back committee there. And then at wide receiver, one of the thinner, lower ceiling units in the NFL, with Courtland Sutton being their number one guy. It's not always about the talent. You have a wide receiver, and I think the Eagles are a great case for that because A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are a great wide receiver tandem that don't get a ton of production. But that being said, I'm just not a huge believer in this Broncos offense against a really solid Eagles defense here. I think the Eagles stick to their formula of great defense and running the football. That's enough to beat the Broncos. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but not a lot of passing going on, and not a lot of punts, a lot of runs, a lot of incompletions. I think the Eagles win this game by a field goal here. I'll go exactly 23-20 just to sliver under the over-under here. In this game, you got the Cardinals starting their third-string running back and now committee, but DeMarcado filling in after both Trey Benson and James Conner go out in back-to-back weeks. Hosting the Titans, who are still looking for their first win. I don't know if they're going to find it here on the road, or being the underdog by more than a touchdown. What it really comes down to is this Titans offense is, I think, the least productive in the league and has scored the least amount of points through 4 games. And to add insult to injury, this defense isn't doing them much favors, letting up the 4th most points per game in the NFL. That's just never going to be a recipe for success. They've got the number 1 overall pick in quarterback in Cam Ward, but there is really little talent around him anywhere on offense, running back, tight end, wide receiver, you name it. There's not really an above average caliber player at any of those positions for him, and even his offensive line is nothing to write home about either. So they're really not setting him up for success, and this is still very much a rebuild year for the Titans, and they're very much in line for the number 1 pick again this year. So this pick is ultimately more about the weaknesses of the Titans. But the things that the Cardinals do have going well for them is they've got a revamped defense this year. Going out and getting guys like Sweat and Calais Campbell has really helped this defensive front 7 solidify itself. They got a great defensive coordinator moving these guys around along with Budda Baker to make opposing offenses confused, puzzled, and scrambling to find answers for them. And then on offense, you've got Trey McBride, the all-pro tight end. And then you started to see a little bit more of emergence from Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver, getting a little bit more comfortable in his own skin in this offense and in the NFL. I think these are steps in the right direction for the Cardinals offense, despite the injuries at running back. And again, I think this should be enough to beat the Titans, who have very little prowess on offense here. I like the Cardinals to win this game 23-14. This is a game I got on my upset alert here with the Bucks facing the Seahawks. I think both these teams are 3-1 this year. Yes, they are, and funnily enough, these teams are right next to each other in PFF grades as well. What you're seeing from these two teams is a little bit tale of 2 different coins here. Bucks are leaning heavily on their offense and their production in Baker Mayfield, picking up where he left off last season. And then the Seahawks are leaning on the backs of a really solid defense and some pretty efficient play from Sam Darnold, although not quite as efficient as he was in Minnesota last year. What the Seahawks are doing well is, doing a little running back by committee. They've been doing the same think for the past couple years with Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, especially Charbonnet being more the receiving back. Jackson Smith and Jigba also picking up where he left off last year and trying to make a claim for one of the top tier receivers in this league. And then their front seven on defense, backed by a really young secondary, is really making this a complete team in both phases, offense and defensively. For the Bucs, they're going to be without Bucky Irving this week, their star second-year running back, but falling back on Rashad White, who is no slouch himself. Rookie wide receiver Ibuka has been incredibly helpful and probably the number one target in this offense. Mike Evans, who's been hurt, is eyeing return this week. We'll see if he can step back in there. And then Chris Godwin, after a pretty gruesome injury last year, starting to get his sea legs here this year too. Offensive line injuries for the Bucs make it tough against a front seven like this, but I think the Seahawks, even coming off a long week, are due to drop one here against a Buccaneers team that I think their offense really, as long as Baker Mayfield is at the helm, has enough gas in the tank to surpass and outperform and output this Seahawks offense. And it's not like the Buccaneers defense is terrible themselves. They actually have a better run defense than the Seahawks are putting up there, and a slightly better coverage grade as well. I think where they are, not even where I think, where they fall off defensively compared to the Seahawks is the pass rush. And so I think the key X factor here will be what can Sam Darnold do if and when this Buccaneers defense gives him time in the pocket. And again, that pass rush being the edge for Seattle will play its face here as the Buccaneers are facing a lot of injuries on their offensive line. But even still, I'm taking the Buccaneers to win this game in a shootout here. Most games with the Buccaneers are a shootout, and I'm going to take them to win this game 24-23. I think it's going to be a fun one, and Baker Mayfield's going to keep shining like he's been doing all season long. This game seems like a no contest right from the start after a short week for the Bengals and Jake Browning really struggling against, again, a solid Broncos defense. Doesn't face a much nicer opponent with this Lions defense that's top 6 in the league here. One of the better pass rushes led by Aiden Hutchinson. You really start to realize how much Joe Burrow was holding this team together with glue and tape because they're not able to do much on offense despite the firepower that they have between Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Chase Brown. And then defense, we always know, was the weak spot of this team along with the offensive line. Again, that offensive line is really going to struggle against a pretty great pass rush for the Lions, especially with Aiden Hutchinson. And then this Lions offense after the Packers game has been putting up points left and right. I think putting up 40 points in 3 straight games and having the highest points in the league through 4 weeks. I think this is a no contest for the Lions. Win this one easy. Something to the tune of 31-17 here. Here's a intriguing game where I think both these teams came out to different starts than people were expecting this year. Chargers 3-1, just dropping one, a shocker on the road last week against the Giants, and the Commanders starting 2-2 and dropping one against the Falcons, I think, to much people's surprise. I was never a big Commanders guy. I think it was a little bit more of a flash in the pan last year and a lot of momentum. Again, just like C.J. Stroud, just like Bo Nix, he started to get some tape on Jayden Daniels and figure out how to stop this guy. I think that's what opposing defenses are starting to figure out. Chargers are looking great with Quentin Johnston, former first-round pick, really started coming his own in his offense. Land McConkey kind of falling off because of it, and with the presence of longtime Charger Keenan Allen coming back this year and being really efficient there. Running back Omarion Hampton had a great outing last time, but what's going to hurt every one of these person's performance is the woes that these guys have had at offensive line, with the biggest one coming to former top 5 pick Joe Alt last week, on top of injuries to Rashawn Slater and the guy that they got from the Eagles in the offseason, Mekhi Becton. So those are 3 really key offensive line guys that are hurt for this team, and that's going to be the big factor. Luckily, the pass rush for the Commanders is nothing special, about average. So could be better, could be worse, but the Chargers game here is going to lie with how their offensive line can hold with a lot of guys that are backups filling in for starting roles this week. Even with that, I love the way Justin Herbert's looked this year. Again, using his slew of wide receivers to make plays happen. I think that happens again. And they lean on their strong defense that is just solid all around. Not really one guy doing anything special, like incredibly special, just a really solid unit that's putting up top 10 numbers. You can't say the same for the Commanders defense that's putting up bottom 10 numbers. I think that's the difference in this game. Is you have both offenses struggling a little bit right now with injuries for the Chargers and just inefficiencies for the Commanders. So I'm going to give the defensive edge here and end the game to the Chargers. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring than you think, just because I like the Chargers defense so much, and I think the Chargers offense takes a step back with these offensive line injuries. I'm going to go Chargers 26, Commanders 23. So I guess slightly over here. Divisional matchup here in Buffalo, hosting the Patriots. After a really nice win against the really nice win against the Panthers, I think the Patriots fall back to earth here going up against the Bills that look borderline unstoppable. These last games, outside of their game against the Ravens, they haven't had to use Josh Allen to win it. Really, it's been this offensive line and James Cook that are really putting on a show, and then Josh Allen kind of fills in when he really has to apply some pressure. I do like the steps that the Patriots are making on offense in getting Drake May a little bit more acquainted, but the big thing for them is turnovers, and they continue to shoot themselves in the foot week after week. And that doesn't always kill them like it didn't against the Panthers, but in prior games it most certainly has, and you really have zero margin for error against this Bills team. I like the Bills a lot here. Probably going to be a little bit closer. Like you saw the Bills kind of fumble a little bit against the Saints. They seem to be looking ahead a few games and kind of underestimating their opponents, but I still think the Bills can put up 30 against this Patriots, and that'll be enough for them to win. We'll go Bills 30, Patriots 20. I believe this is the Monday night matchup here with the Chiefs on the road facing the Jags. Chiefs that really came back true to form against the Ravens last week, and I think it's hard for people to tell, is that the Ravens offense starting to click and find their mojo as Xavier Worthy comes back from a week 1 injury, or is that more virtuistic of a really weak Ravens defense and Ravens secondary? I think it's a little bit of both, but regardless of that, they're facing it right now a top 5 Jags defense that leads the league in turnovers. Now, this Chiefs team has never been one, especially led by Patrick Mahomes, to have turnover issues, so that might be a little bit more of a minimized issue this game, and certainly a mitigant for this Chiefs offense. But it's something to be said about how this Jags defense, not the offense, is leading them to their 3-1 success to the start of this season. For the Jaguars, I'm really looking forward for them to start getting top 2 pick and Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr., last year's first-round wide receiver pick, to really start to click in this new look Liam Cohen offense. Haven't seen it yet. Been a little bit disappointed. I don't think even at home against the Chiefs is the time you're going to see it, as Steve Spagnuolo, this coordinator for the Chiefs, has always had it figured out. And right now he's employing the #1 coverage unit in the NFL there. I think you're going to see the Chiefs give this Jaguars offense some struggles. They're not going to fall into the traps that the rest of the offenses in this NFL have and allow the Jaguars to turn them over multiple times. Patrick Mahomes, that is not his brand of football, and I don't expect that to start being so this week. So I like the Chiefs. I like them to keep using Xavier Worthy as a gadget guy to open up this offense. I think that's going to be a big help for them in both the running and passing game. And I like the Chiefs here to really stymie this Jaguars offense and continue what they have going offensively themselves. And I think they cover the spread, -3.5. I think you see the under in a really dominant Chiefs defense performance game too. So I'm going to go Chiefs 23, Jags 17. But that's all I got for this video. Trying to do a good job of going through these games quickly, although maybe to some detriment of my enunciation, but hopefully everyone was able to follow along, likes the format of this video, and most importantly, returns next week. Hopefully we do, and I'll see you guys all in week 6.